The time to join us today. Let's start out, let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit more about Women of Color in Capital, who you are, and what brought you going down this journey.
Yeah, so Women of Color in Capital is an initiative that my firm started about 2 years ago to really address the lack of a capital that women of color were getting, but then also to create an overall ecosystem of support. So essentially what we focus on is building intergenerational wealth, getting capital for your business, learning how to become an investor and a fund manager, right? So thinking about the overall pipeline, the overall potential life cycle that women might be in, right? And so bringing everyone together was amazing because it also allows investors to be in the same room as business owners that are looking for investment, right? And I do believe that because of the lack of access of information, it's really hard for people to kind of move up in the way that they want to, right? So you could be a professional woman that's managing your company or working at a company, and you realize that, hey, you haven't really been focused on your finances, or even if you were, you may not have known about some of these opportunities, right? So you might not have learned about angel investment, investing as an LP, even running your own fund. And information and exposure is so important. So for me, I was really excited to bring that initiative together and bring so many amazing women and speakers and sponsors together in the room for us to share that moment.
That's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about the conference and your plans for this year? As we all know, still in the midst of a pandemic with COVID-19. I would imagine, that's a little bit challenging. Could you talk a little about your experience shifting to a digital platform and, kind of giving advice to other people who are trying to create spaces in these times?
Yeah, I mean, to be totally honest, I think, outside of everything that's happening with COVID, which has been a huge impact on all businesses, for us as a business that hosts conferences, we host events, really being able to digitize the business has been able to help us expand our platform, right? So when we were advertising Women of Color in Capital, women were writing back like, is this going to be online? Are you going to come to our city? And I'm like, there's only one me. So we host our annual conference, and that's all we can do in terms of our capacity right now. But this year we're going to be hosting a virtual conference, which I'm super excited about. So it allows us to bring everyone together no matter where you are. They can participate on that. And then from there, it's going to allow us to continue to have other content that we're offering. So we're going to be offering workshops and masterclasses. When the second round of funding for the PPP loan came out, we actually hosted a masterclass on that. So we had an expert come on, and that specific initiative, it was totally free. You can come on, it was recorded, you can go and watch it later. And I'm excited to say that, some of the people that watched it were able to get a PPP loan. They didn't know about it. They didn't know how to get the information. And we were able to get it to them so quick because the legislation, it was signed on a Friday, and we literally had the session on a Monday. And we were saying, like, whatever you're doing tonight, stop, apply. And it was such a great opportunity to be able to connect the people that were looking for the information, the business owners, whether they own businesses or they're solo practitioners, with the capital, right? So what I'm excited about is as we go virtual, it allows me to use my company as a digital resource, right? And what I love about Women of Color in Capital, again, is like our goal is a one-stop shop for all things capital that specifically focuses on women of color. And that's important because the access to capital for women of color is extremely, extremely difficult, and it's extremely low. So the people that come to speak, the sponsors that come on board, the attendees, they're specifically interested in this. So our speakers are not going to say like, oh, if you're starting your business, like go ask your uncle for a $250,000 investment. Like our speakers know that's not going to happen. So when we had our session on alternative sources of capital, for example, right, we talked about crowdfunding. We talked about the different types of incentives that you can get people. We talked about different ways to get money. So for me, I'm really, really excited about what we're doing. And I'm actually really excited about having the opportunity to be digital. So in 2020, we are definitely going to be digital this year, but we are going to host the conference in 2021 because although being online provides one type of additional tool in our toolkit, if you will, and it allows us to expand, there is nothing like the in-person experience as well. I think what people will learn now is people will really start to value the in-person contact, the in-person relationship, because even at these conferences, just having the opportunity to go up to the speaker and talk to them. And what I'm excited about for the conferences that we put on is our speakers are invested. So they stay till the end. They stay in network. They give out their cards. They give out their information. And a lot of that great networking it's happening in the hallways. It's happening in between sessions. You're sitting next to someone who asks a really great question. You're like, I actually have that exact same problem. So now you can connect with people and you can build relationships. And I'm really excited about the people that reached out to me and let me know that not only did they get investment for their businesses, they got connected with investors. They learned about what venture capital is. Some women didn't even know. You know, some women can even work at a bank and say like, I work at a bank, but this is not my area and I don't know anything about it. And I believe that, you know, really to whom much is given, much is required, but also everyone has the opportunity to level up if they have access to the information. So for me, it's really important that the woman that wants to become a venture capitalist or a PE fund manager is in the same room as a woman that just wants to get her budget together or learn how to work with an advisor, because the goal is over time, you're really growing and you're developing and you're figuring out where it is that you want to be. And so that allows people to connect, because what's interesting about, you know, women of color and capital, and I think women of color specifically, is when companies reach out to us and they ask us what our numbers are in terms of professional women that just either want to invest or they want to get their finances together, and the business owners, well, I say, well, here's the interesting thing. Because women of color, especially Black women, lack access to capital, a lot of times they're doing both. So they're side hustling. They're working their day job, and they're also at night or on the weekends, they're working on their business, right? So it takes more time for them to get there, but ultimately they actually fall in both categories. Or there's some women that they're interested in starting a business, but they just never had the time to learn some of the information to get started. So those are the things that really get me excited.
Yeah, me too. And, you know, less exciting news. Obviously, we're all deeply impacted by the horrific death of George Floyd, but really inspired by the really worldwide moment that we're in with the peaceful protests that are happening, the call for justice. As a part of the discussion recently with the CBC and the rest of the Democrats in the House and Senate, Chairwoman Bass spoke a little bit about how relations with police and keeping communities safe has a lot more to do with economic empowerment and lack of access to capital, entrepreneurship, resources, and education in these communities. Women of color and capital kind of takes up that challenge, right? Could you just speak a little bit more about, you know, how, you know, federal funding for programs and educational platforms like Women of Color and Capital can really address that issue, and where you sort of see folks really coming away from the conference and stepping into those shoes?
Yes, so I think that's 100% spot on. When we think about some of the issues that will happen in our communities, it's really socioeconomic. Right. So when we're talking about lack of opportunities in terms of jobs, in terms of education, in terms of developing and building your skill set, all of those things require capital, right? All of those things require money. And so for me, you know, our platform with Women of Color and Capital is really a part of a larger platform, which is Avant-Garde Network. So my firm, Avant-Garde Network, hosts a lot of business conferences and things like that. But our two main initiatives are Women of Color and Capital and Diversity in Commercial Real Estate. Okay. And both of those conferences specifically focus on the economic equity, right? So after the dust settles, how do we change education? How do we provide more jobs? If a woman has an amazing business and does not have the capital for it, that business will fail, period, right? A lot of women who wanted to get PPP loans could not get PPP loans because they don't qualify because they are side hustling, right? So
Right.
all of the money that they have in their business, they take that and they reinvest in the business. And so they're not taking a salary for themselves, which then means that when they file their taxes, they don't have anything to show for their actual work, right?
Yeah.
And there's a huge economic shift happening with the PPP loan where you can use the money for working capital, primarily use it for salary. So women that actually need it for salary can't use it for salary because they're more so under the radar, right? When we're thinking about people that are preparing and drafting this legislation, some of them don't realize that. A lot of people love to cite the numbers. Black women are the fastest growing number of entrepreneurs, but they don't cite that Black women are also not getting the capital to be able to grow their business. And so for me, that's what these conferences really speak to. They speak to bringing that information to the forefront and making sure that women have the opportunity, because, there's a quote that says, when you invest in a woman, you invest in an entire community. And that is true, right? And I also want to touch upon, since while we're here, I want to touch upon the fact that we also have to acknowledge that Black and Latinx women are not being paid equally, right? Making 64 cents to 53 cents on the dollar in comparison to a white man for the same work. Right. So for me, that's something that, there's a term that I've coined called triple validation, right? So, and what that means is that Black women have to triple validate their businesses. So first you have to validate your business with no money, right? You don't have enough money to get started. You're starting to make sales, you're reinvesting and things like that. And then people want to partner with you, right? People are like, okay, you're getting traction. This looks really interesting. You look really interesting to us, but we want to see you do it again, right? It's like, okay, well, that's interesting because you want to see me do it again with no money. And then after you do it again, you make it bigger, you're better. You're like, well, that actually looks really good. I see that you got some traction, but we really need you to be here. And you're like, okay, well, I'm here, but I don't have the same amount of capital as a person that's here. And you're trying to compare the two. You want me to all of a sudden jump here without that money. And then so now you have to validate again with no money to get to the same point as a business that has been well-funded or at least had enough working capital to get their business to the next level. Because the reality is not every woman of color needs venture capital for their business. Not everybody necessarily even needs angel investment. Sometimes they just need working capital. Sometimes they just need a bank loan, right? So now when we reverse engineer it and take it back again, we're talking about the woman of color that's making $64,000 for the same work that a white man does, and he makes $100,000. Imagine what that Black woman or that Latinx woman could do with that extra $46,000 or $40,000 that they can now take into their business and use that as working capital, or use that to donate to more charities that impact their communities, or use that to help rebuild the communities that they live in, or use that money to invest in the churches that they live in that also do work within the community. So it is a huge cycle. It is not just one thing. And for us at Women of Color, that's something that we even talk about. Like, at the conference, our goal is we continue to expand the content. We are planning on having something around salary negotiations, helping women of color look at term sheets, because while I'm here, I'm going to talk about term sheets and the term sheets that are presented to Black and Latinx founders, which are totally ridiculous. People want to give a little bit of money and want to take 30-40% of the business. Like that is ridiculous. And if you're watching, don't take those terms, okay? And it's only because they don't know. They've never seen a term sheet before. They cannot go to their friends and family to get the money, right? Your friends, your family, they might loan you no interest. They might say, okay, just pay me back 2%, or I just really want to support you. That's why platforms like crowdfunding and things like that are important, but we also have to have equitable access to capital. These companies that are putting out these Black Lives Matter statements, that is great. And I'm glad that you're putting out, and I support you. I support you on that. And you should continue to do that. But let's really get serious about this and put our money where our mouth is and say, yes, when we're looking at our diversity budget, let's look at it, but let's also drill down into the areas that actually need more help. What are we requiring, right? Because that's another thing too. You might say, okay, well, this business owner, we are willing to, sponsor that event or invest in that for $250,000. But when it's a Black or Latinx woman, it's like, oh, we think that we can potentially do 5 or 10,000. Well, guess what? That's not moving the needle. It is not moving the needle at all. And we also need to think about the perception of value that we're requiring from women of color that they might not be requiring for other people. Right. We don't get to just come into a room and have the tech look or have the right background or family. And people say, you know what? I believe in this guy. This guy reminds me of myself. This guy reminds me of my cousin. And for that reason, I know that he can do it. Whereas we're asking women of color, okay, what is your numbers? What are your ROI? How big is your market? Like we have to make sure, and this is really for the companies to think about, are we asking the same questions, right? There was a study that showed that women are not asked the same questions as men when it comes to investing. What happens with women is they ask women to respond to why the business is going to fail, right? And how they're going to get around it. And they give men the opportunity to say why the business is going to succeed. Right? So the challenge to the investors, to the fund managers, to the companies is, are we asking the same questions? Are we giving people the same opportunities? And so that is a part of the ecosystem that we're talking about when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, right? We want to make sure that the perception is, yes, I'm seeing a woman of color with her business, and I believe that she can do it the same way that I believe a white man can do it.
Absolutely. So, you've really said it all. And, in the conversations that I've been having with folks, both in these interviews and personally, is, okay, let's take a step and talk about how we can sort of inform this or have this be a part of the DNA of what we're doing every day, right? For example, we subscribe to these huge corporations for different services every day. If we use like $15 a month or $15 a paycheck to invest in programs like Women of Color and Capital, to invest in Black Lives Matter, to invest in all of these people who are taking the time, and side hustling or main hustling to do the work, just thinking about that. So one, tell us how we can support Women of Color and Capital in general, and also let us know how we can sign up for the workshops and programs at Women of Color and Capital.
Excellent question. So Women of Color and Capital, our website is womenofcoloringcapital.com. Perfect. And, you can sign up for our newsletter and we'll email all of the information to you in terms of, the corporation, the investors, the angel investors, the LP investors, like they can also sign up, reach out to us. We want to partner with companies that have a very specific interest in the niche that we are working with, right? There are very unique issues, but there's a lot of knowledge that some of these companies can even share. Again, when we talk about the ecosystem, we're also talking about the knowledge gap, right? And so, for example, when we hosted Diversity in Commercial Real Estate, that conference, which is now the largest conference in the nation that specifically focuses on getting people of color into commercial real estate, what we found was a lot of people want to be in commercial real estate. They just didn't know it existed. They didn't understand that commercial real estate is its own industry. And within that industry, there's affordable, there's development, there's retail, there's office. People don't know these things. And so for us, we connect those experts. So we want to work with companies and investors and angel investors that want to not only partner with us, but share the knowledge, and they really want to invest in women of color businesses. So we are totally open and totally excited to be able to have the opportunity to create this ecosystem where we get to connect the areas where the gaps really need to be filled.
Well, I will end it on that very high note. We thank you so much for your time, Adeola.
Thank you. Thank you.
this work. I'm sure that, this won't be the last time that we're speaking, but so happy that you take your time to share your insights with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for interviewing me and having me here. I'm really excited. I'm glad that the world is starting to change. I'm glad that people are starting to see where the needs are and really being open to having the conversation and saying, yes, this is something that we need to work on. Let's bring the right people to the table to have the conversation to be able to create a better America and a better world for ourselves and our children.
Thank you so much, Adeola.
Right, thank you.
For the rest of your week.
Okay, you too. Goodbye. Thank you.
Okay. So we could just, Bill cut up the recording, but just send it to me and then I'll transcribe it. I'm also going to need a photo for you for the written version. And once you send it to me, then I'm going to send it back to you in an email so I can get it released so that we can put it on the site.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So right. So you want me to stop recording right now?
Yeah, you can go ahead and stop recording. They'll cut that part out. But yeah, I'll once you send me over the picture, I'm gonna transcribe this. Send me over the picture. I'll send you a proof of what I'm submitting to them on the website.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty much the steps. And once I get over everything to them, I'll get ETA in terms of when it's going to be released, so that you can funnel it into whatever you're doing, like on social or through your newsletters.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to stop the recording.